Hello, I am Edward. Picture a creaking deck, a horizon, and a dark shape rising from the deep like a moving cliff. The crew believes it is an ordinary hunt. It is not. Before this day ends, a living mountain will shatter their ship and leave a tale fierce enough to echo inside the novel Moby Dick. The vessel is a whaleship from a wind-sharpened small island port. The men have chased fortune across empty water for months. They know cordage, brine, and try-work smoke. They also know the animal they seek, a giant with a mind of its own. Yet on this day, the roles reverse. The hunters become the hunted. It begins with a strike that does not go to plan. A massive bull dives, then surfaces at a distance with a wake like a plough. The crew hauls lines, expecting the usual dance. Instead, the whale stops, faces the ship, and moves with slow, spine-tightening intent. There is a keel-deep jolt, then a roar of splitting timber and iron nails. Men seize the rails as the bull leaps under the blow. The deck groans under storm-born pressure. The long rolling swell keeps time like a drum. Here is the twist. The animal does not flee, hesitate, or flinch. It wheels, studies the hull, and charges again, faster, head low, as if the ship itself were a rival. The second impact is worse than the first. Planks gape, water surges in. Pumps cannot keep pace. The ship is dying. The crew has only minutes and the strength of their hands. They lower open whaleboats and grab charts, bread, water casks, a compass. The captain must choose a course. West holds distant islands, an unknown welcome. East offers a long drift toward familiar coasts through sun and storm. Which risk is smaller? The men argue. Time decides, sails rise. Behind them, the wreck settles with a long sigh. Days unroll across a flat blue calendar of heat and glare. A squall tears a sail. Food thins, water becomes the measure of hope. Even so, the boats do not simply drift. They learn, adapt, and improvise. They trade rations. They read sky and current. They patch, navigate, and endure, hour after hour in a sun-hammered, horizon-wide emptiness. Why did the whale attack at all? The men ask that question for the rest of their lives. Some say hull noise drew it like a challenge. Others speak of pain learned in other seas. The truth hides in deep, current-twisted water. When a squall scatters the boats, each crew becomes a small world held together by duty and the math of survival. At last a flag shows on the horizon. Rescue does not arrive with fanfare. It comes as a line of canvas sliding closer while the tired men hold their breath. The captain faces questions he cannot silence. A mate writes an account in spare sentences that pass from hand to hand. A young writer hears the salt-heavy story at sea and brings it ashore, turning fact into a storm of myth and a whale that seems to think. Set the book aside and hear the bones of the real day. A ship met a mind in the water and lost. Men who thought they knew the ocean discovered a new rule. Out here, the sea chooses the terms and enforces them. Skill matters. So do humility and luck. Above all, the will to hold the tiller when the horizon gives nothing back. There is another thread to pull. Buried in the survivors' stories is a lesson about leadership under strain. Calm, steady orders at the rail, when panic would be easier. Fair shares when fear says hoard. The habit of watching birds and kelp, of reading cross-grained currents as if the ocean were a map. These small choices keep a crew alive until help appears. The truth behind this might surprise you. The most famous white whale in literature began with a real strike, a real roar of timber, and real open boats pushing across empty water. It was terror, yes, but also craft, courage, and the stubborn kind of hope that makes legends possible. Stay with me, because the aftermath is where the hardest decisions were made, and where the survivors taught the world how to measure the distance between man and sea. Fear travels fastest when the boats drift apart. One crew argues for a shorter course to known shipping lanes. Another trusts the promise of distant islands. A third chooses to hold position and signal by day. Hunger has a voice in every decision, so does pride. The captain learns the hardest craft of all, to turn debate into action before the sun goes down. Which choice gives a small boat the largest chance on an ocean that hides both rescue and ruin? They read the sea like a quiet book. A line of clouds smiles on the horizon, and they know a breeze will return by evening. Shearwaters circle, and they know life is near, and where there is life, there may be food. Kelp slides by, and they trace a current that will carry them like a slow conveyor. At night the stars come out, and the helmsman recites their names as if calling roll. The North Star keeps its place. Even exhausted men can steer by something that does not flinch. Water is the strictest teacher. They measure it in mouthfuls, not cups. Someone suggests saving the last drop for morning to encourage hope at dawn. Another says, share it now, to buy 1 more hour of strength for rowing. The captain answers with fairness. Everyone receives the same, including the man who faltered today and the man who rowed like two. Fair shares hold a crew together when fear would break it into islands. The sea gives warnings and small gifts. Flying fish tumble into the boat like a blessing. A fin circles and reminds them that the ocean has its own patrol. At night a long breath rolls over the water, and the men hold still. Somewhere in the dark a whale is sounding, alive and unafraid. They speak quietly about the strike that began it all. Was it anger? Was it memory? Was it only the hard logic of a wounded giant that had learned what ships can do? The answer stays under the skin of the sea, and perhaps that is where it belongs. Days lengthen into stories. One boat sights a sail at dawn and hoists a rag of cloth that looks larger than courage. Another boat, far away, keeps pace with a river in the ocean that runs without banks. A third falls behind the horizon and vanishes from the others. Rescue arrives without music, only a shadow that grows until the faces on deck become clear enough to trust. Lines are thrown, hands take hands. The world narrows to the feeling of a boot on solid planks. When the survivors come ashore, the questions begin again. What happened first? What happened fast? What happened because of a choice made in a single breath? They answer with spare sentences. A clerk writes them down. A mate drafts a clean account. A young sailor hears more than facts and carries the tale like a coal. In time he blows on it until it becomes a fire that lights a novel, where a captain chases a whiteness across the world. But the reality is even more intriguing, because the real day offers different lessons than the legend. The sea is not a villain. It is a teacher with a stern voice. The whale is not a symbol of malice. It is a fact with weight and intent. Men who think they command everything learn to negotiate with distance, weather, time, and luck. The ocean respects craft and punishes vanity. It rarely explains which is which in the moment. What did the survivors do that we still admire? They kept their rules when the world offered excuses to break them. They shared what mattered. They steered by stars when the horizon looked empty of promise. They read small signs, a smell in the air, a run of slick water, the sudden hush before a squall. They practiced a quiet kind of heroism that does not need speeches. Hold the line, trim the sail, mind the compass, help the man beside you. There is one more twist to the story. The ship did not only break, it multiplied. Each open boat became a new vessel, with a captain, a course, and a chance. Leadership repeated at a smaller scale. Responsibility did not shrink. It became easier to see. When the sea finally gave the men back, they brought more than scars. They brought a method for meeting impossible days. Start with fairness. Use what you know. Add what you can learn before night arrives. Trust courage that is steady rather than loud. So picture the scene one more time. A living mountain lifts out of the dark water. Timber groans, nails complain. Then the long work begins in boats no larger than a room. That is the part worth remembering. Not the blow, but the hands that kept moving afterward. A writer turned that day into a myth that still walks the shelves. The survivors turned it into a way to live when the horizon refuses to answer. Between the two versions sits a truth strong enough to outlast storms. On the open sea and in the rest of life, skill and humility travel best as a pair, and hope is a course you choose, not a gift you wait to receive.